On my search of sense of safety, I came across this great new website. And this is, as you see, based on research. Transdisciplinary evidence-based research for the sense of safety. Underpinning the whole sense of safety project is a library of transdisciplinary evidence-based research. Sense of safety is not feeling threat regarding to not only your body, but also mind and spirit. Feeling safe in all aspects of life, being respected for your body, for your mind and spirit. People are like trees, a whole organism with roots, trunk and leaves, noticing the processes and patterns of impact on the whole tree. One of these connecting and moving dynamics is the sense of safety. And there is not just one sense of safety, but it's all interconnected. One is the environment, living and work conditions where people experience justice and solidarity with neighbors and have access to shelter, resources, green space, blue space, I don't know what that is. Information, time, freedom, stability, and opportunity for meaningful occupation. Meaningful occupation, not some shit job that will stress you out more and kill off all the joy. And the social climate is feeling safe at work impacts creativity, productivity, learning, and self-expression. Organizational psychologists ask what allows people to openly share ideas and contribute part of themselves to a collaborative undertaking. A question relevant to therapeutic relationships and to the safety of family or kinship groupings. So the social climate is the culture and community at home and where people live and learn, including intergenerational and social media experiences that communicates worth, hope, value, and respect for each person, their language, beliefs, culture, creativity, and story. Number 3, relationships. Personal relationships that offer respectful connection that is available, attuned, reflective, genuine, and inclusive. That regulates and soothes and facilitates belonging, dignity, trust, and shared meaning-making. Trauma can be defined as violation of an expectancy to be safe with another, and repeatedly being left psychologically alone in unbearable emotional pain, highlighting the central role of relationships and their impact on the self. Then, of course, the body. The body requires regulation, calm, restorative sleep, nutrition, accurate perception, concentration, and sensation, including emotions, as well as freedom to move, express, connect, and communicate. This includes an overarching calm body that is safe on the inside. That's what I call creating a sanctuary within yourself. Bodily integrity and regulation at multiple levels, coherence, that is embedded in safe relationships, connection, an overall visceral sense of control and safety, as described by none other than Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote the book The Body Keeps the Score, Mind, Brain, Body in the Transformation of Trauma. Great book. Is a way to describe the physicality of a sense of safety. Other aspects of the physical body that are relevant in a whole person assessment include appearance, physiology, emotion, memory, sensation, arousal, and behavior. Inner experience, the subjective inner world of the person's memories, perceptions, attention, visions, dreams, intuitions, and thoughts need to be orderly, calm, peaceful, insightful, reflective, coherent, purposeful, supportive, and compassionate. The literature on attention, effortful control, cognitions, self-talk, and emotion regulation are especially relevant to this domain. So they always have their resources, so I put the link in the description. You can look it up yourself. It's a great website. The sense of self. Each person needs inner attitudes and communication towards themselves that communicates tenderness, affection, dignity, trust, respect, and inner belonging, cooperation, and unity. Forms of empathic failure towards the self are inherently threatening to the sense of self. Love is a relief from scanning the outer world for threat and the inner world for shame. Key primary care researchers have identified a GP role in enabling and restoring sense of self. Grief researchers describe working towards a multifaceted dynamic and narrative self, or reconstituting the self. Yeah, Cosolino, that's also a great book, The Neuroscience of Human Relationships, Attachment, and the Developing Social Brain. The other ones, I don't know. And then the meaning and spirit. People need experiences of hope, purpose, connection, and sense-making in their cultural, religious, or spiritual values and beliefs. Yes, and that's why I'm saying having these synchronicities happening, that is a source of hope, because then I feel so guided. I feel there is higher wisdom, which I can rely on and trust. That's very important to have. I don't know how people deal without that. So this one speaks of spirituality as an aspect of cultural identity that has become increasingly recognized for its potential to impact health, behaviors, and healthcare decision-making. And you also have to identify the nature and content of a person's distress. It's very important. A dynamic of feeling comfortable, capable, and with, aligned to, your whole self. It includes the dynamics of broad awareness, calm sense-making, respectful connection, and capable engagement expressed as self-control, taking responsibility, aligning with values, boundaries, differentiation, and agency. That's called owning yourself. The delicate task of being true to yourself, having integrity while in relationship with other people, is fraught with potential experiences of disconnection and the fear of disconnection experienced as shame and loss of self. Learning how to understand and handle your own responses to other people, to have self-control, your own locus of control, to maintain your own integrity and remain in relationship is a lifelong journey. It includes being loyal to yourself, growing in comfort within your body and with your humanity, and a sense of being able to manage what the world exposes to you. This task is not easy. In fact, Martin Buber says it takes a lifetime to learn how to be yourself when you are near other people. Yeah. Owning yourself includes this sense of comfort and capacity within yourself. And unfortunately, as autistic, you are more challenged in owning yourself in a society that judges differences. And the broad awareness is a complex sensory, relational, neurological, and intuitive process of attending to and noticing of self, other, and context that is a building block for integrity, connection, and coherence. It requires concurrent attention or co-awareness and contributes to sense of humor, creativity, capacity to relate and dialogue, as well as capacity to hold the tension of uncertainty, dialectics, or paradoxes. This is being in your window of tolerance and not being triggered into fight, flight, or freeze. When you are within your window of tolerance, then all of this is possible. The calm sense making, a clear-headed awareness and intuitive knowing that facilitates organizing and making sense of self, relationships, and context through regulation, reflection, dialogue, story, and rituals. Rituals are important, yes. It includes calm body, emotion regulation, co-regulation in relationships, and meaning making, including wonder, awe, and transcendence. And I get the sense of wonder in nature, and the awe I get when synchronicities happen. I call these miraculous because they're so mind-blowing at times. And then, of course, that inner going on, that inner guidance you can rely on. That's important too. That's what I call being rooted within yourself, or centered within yourself. That's important too. And then there is the respectful connection with others. Reciprocal, attuned, trusting, connecting relationships towards self, others, and the wider community and country. This is a dynamic that is respectful towards the integrity and worth of the whole person, their body, emotions, meanings, culture, community, identity, and place. And then the capable engagement, a dynamic interplay of self, others, and context that encourages movement, confident self-expression. That's just so important. And the purpose and engagement with community and context. It involves feeling safe enough to progress, to grow, to learn, to connect, to build, to create, to speak, to dance or move in a way that you feel comfortable, to challenge, to love. It involves a sense of adequacy, capacity, or agency to deal with the implications of a decision or situation. The dynamic of sense of safety as more than risk aversion or seeking safe places or people to withdraw to. That undermines mastery. Instead, the sense of safety includes active movement towards more capacity. It includes agency of self-efficacy and approach-oriented coping. Sense of safety encourages a view of life's struggles as places of growth and reconnection with purpose, recalibrating what matters and engaging with life on its terms. Accumulated experiences of invalidation related to abuse, neglect, and stigma might lead to heightened safety distress or defensive physiological escalation triggered by the organism's need for safety. Trauma is not always so extreme and is not necessarily related to single catastrophic events. It can also be associated with poverty, harassment, bullying, loss, and chronic invalidation. Trauma can be perpetuated by self-beratement and complicated when it involves repeated exposure over time, such as ongoing abuse, disregard, neglect, and being forced or choosing to endure a toxic or oppressive environment. This quote comes from the book Trauma, Stigma and Autism, Developing Resilience and Loosening the Grip of Shame by Gordon Gates. Very good book. So, going to the forest is very different from going in a group setting of people that do not feel safe to you or your nervous system, or it can just be overwhelming sensory-wise. In the forest, you can just be your essence. No need to pretend or do. You can just be yourself, very different from going into a social setting. Moral, social, and psychological sense of safety. Chronic invalidation can lead to an oversensitive danger alarm in the body, mind, waiting to be activated by the smallest trigger. We have much to learn from autism in this regard, because the humanly erosive process of chronic invalidation is constantly at work through stigma and stigmatizing micro-events that can make us feel like crawling under a rock, or even aliens on this planet.
The human world, of necessity, is created for the majority. That's just practical sense. If you're not, in certain respects, like the majority, if you're a bit different, adapting to that world can be very difficult. Fitting into it can be very difficult. If you can't sit still and you're very distractible and you find it hard to attend to rather dull material, and if you struggle with learning to read and write, you're going to find it very difficult to do well at school. And that can have awful consequences. What I mean by neurodiversity is that all brains are different.
Growing up, I felt different to other people, and I sort of viewed myself as an outsider. And actually that was okay. That was all right. I just sort of, somewhere in my heart, accepted that I was different. I don't think it made me feel very good or very well, but it was just who and what I was.
The term neurodiversity actually came into being in the context of the autism disability movement, for want of a better expression, where people with autism were saying, actually, you shouldn't see us as people having something wrong with us. We haven't got a disease. We're not broken. We're just different. We are towards the ends of a spectrum on which everybody is located.
I just thought I was a bit of a freak, to be honest with you. You know, I was like, well, why can't I cope with situations like family members or close friends? Why do I struggle being around so many people? Or, it used to happen quite a lot in, social situations. And I would say that I was better on a one-to-one basis, but it sort of impacted me more when there were more than, two people there.
What I'm trying to talk about is that if you are significantly different from the average person, and if we think about the average person as being in the middle of the bell curve, if you know what I mean by that, so most of us are in the middle section. But of course, there are some of us who are towards the ends, aren't there? Just as a matter of probability, that is bound to be the case. And because we probably exist on many, and maybe millions of different dimensions, it's likely that all of us, in some respects, are outliers rather than average people, who are the ones who are described as normal.
I dealt with, I suppose, my difference, which I wasn't aware of growing up, was I was very shy, and I feel quite emotional saying this, but I think I sort of isolated myself from other people. And I've always had friends,
same
but
here.
if I reflect
Me too.
how it wasn't a very, especially when I was a lot younger, pleasant experience for me. And it was almost like I sort of right now when I think of it, it's like having an out of body experience. I sort of, and actually maybe that is what happened, is that I used to sort of, maybe dissociate or leave my body to deal with it because it was too stimulating for me.
Exactly.
And the proof in the pudding is in my school reports. You know, it's so interesting. I found them recently, actually, and I was so ashamed about them that I actually chucked them in the bin, and that's a really sad thing. So I was always in trouble at school, but it was like something that I couldn't help, and I wasn't aware of it at all. But that really, I think you can see with my emotion here, it really dented my confidence, because that was 10 years of having awful school reports and my parents having to go in and been told that I'm this disruptive person. And as a child, you know, you have no bad intentions, but you're being told that there's something wrong with you, I suppose. So that was really, really challenging for me.
Whenever conventional beliefs are challenged, there is resistance from society, especially when so-called uneducated experts sit in a power position, wielding their power over you. And you have basically no say in it. In a previous video, I talked about that kind of abuse, which can also lead to trauma. When they base their decisions on established conventions. And then you feel judged and dismissed. Yeah, and this puts you in a survival response. Because accumulated experiences of invalidation related to abuse, neglect, and stigma, as well as other violating assaults on our personhood, can cause trauma to build up in the body in the end. And this is totally being disregarded by the authorities, that their decision-making can put so much stress on our nervous system, it can lead to disease. Because we know chronic high cortisol will do that. Adverse institutional trauma is a real thing. Stress triggers a combination of signals from both hormones and nerves. These signals cause your adrenal glands to release hormones, including adrenaline and cortisol. The result is an increase in heart rate and energy as part of the fight or flight response. But you also have that still and freeze activated. It's your body's way of preparing itself for potentially dangerous or harmful situations. Cortisol also helps to limit any functions that aren't essential in a fight or flight situation. Once the threat passes, your hormones return to their usual levels, or actually should return to their usual levels. This whole process can be a lifesaver. But when you're under constant stress, this response doesn't always turn off. Long-term exposure to cortisol and other stress hormones can wreak havoc on almost all of your body's processes, increasing your risk of many health issues. And especially that anxiety and depression, I'm always saying, go to the root of the problem. Don't treat the symptom. There is always a root cause for the symptom to appear. And in our society, we just keep treating the symptoms. Because nobody wants to take responsibility for their actions, especially these authorities. They just blame you for being difficult. Easy, right? But they have a very strong impact through their decision making that poses a threat to your nervous system and sense of well-being. But of course, they don't want to acknowledge that, right? Just blame the autistic. They are mentally disordered anyway. Easy. So just put on more load on that. Not ever taking responsibility for your own fucking behavior, sitting in a power position. Because it has always been done so, right? And they don't like to change their ways. Especially when it comes to money. So yeah, our system is all backwards. Just is, and all you can do is navigate through it and find those few people that are still supporting you and not the system. The difference between being treated with dignity, respect, and validation is like day and night too. Feeling gaslit, invalidated, basically dehumanized. This leads to heightened safety distress or defensive physiological escalation, triggered by the organism's need for safety, which may or may not be conscious. When overactivated, such safety distress can trigger a cascade of difficulties, including emotional escalation and flustering that worsens whatever challenges of autisticity may already be present. Yeah, and then it can indeed look like that. When you are triggered out of your window of tolerance, you go into fight-flight. And usually it's the flight response. So if you can get away, bring yourself into safety, you can calm down all by yourself. But then, if this isn't given, maybe some fucking idiot is standing in your way, wanting to enforce his fucking idiotic idea onto you, making you behave in a certain way. Phew. This in me will trigger that Rottweiler, definitely, that hissing cat. Yeah, and then that's the problem. Because you are in survival response. That's natural in all animals. Throughout nature, when their survival is threatened, they either flee, or if that's not possible, look at the horse. It will fight it will fight fiercely if it cannot flee. And we humans think we are so domesticated and don't have that anymore, but we do. We just have suppressed it, which causes a lot of additional trauma, because then we go into freeze and compliance, which can be even more traumatic in the long term. So, there needs to be a balance. Needs have to be met, not just your behavior being criticized and then somehow with cognitive behavioral psychology methods wanting you to change your behavior. The behavior is the response to a threat. So, remove the threat. It's very logical. Remove the threat. Behavior will not be there because it's not a response to threat anymore. There is no threat, there is no response. Very simple.